artistic legacy and the history of Disney animation, from some of the earliest films of our studio and straight up to the modern era. And returning with us today is Mr. Keith Lapinig. It's a shame they don't know who you are. A fellow cast member from Disney ABC, who's been a key part of our Myths and Secrets journey for the past 2 years. That's actually one of our vaults at the ARL. So I'm proud to be in the company of specialists who care for an estimated 65 million pieces of animation production art. And our goal at the ARL is to preserve and to maintain the artistic integrity and legacy and history of the animated shorts and features, as well as to set straight any rogue information that's taken a life of its own during a film or character's history. So the collection at the ARL is accessed by the Walt Disney Company for reference, inspiration, and exhibition, as well as our providing authoritative information on Disney animation production and history. And today, as we did 2 years ago, well, we're going to share some information with you, debunk a few myths, and share some of that collection with you. So, to help kick it off, I want to introduce Tom.
How you doing, everybody? As Doug said, I am Tom Pniewski. I am a collections coordinator at the Walt Disney Animation Research Library. Our responsibility is to make sure that the artwork you see in those boxes are basically put in archival housing and is able to be researched by the artists within the Walt Disney Company. That is the short of it. I could get a lot longer on this, but if I were to do that, Keith wouldn't be able to get up here and I believe start off the presentation. So I take it you're up.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I had to introduce you somehow.
First topic. First, hi everyone. So as Doug mentioned, I also work for the Walt Disney Company as manager of interactive design for Disney ABC. For my first round, I thought I would share a fun story that doesn't debunk a myth, but rather shares a secret and a look at the things one learns from Tom and Doug when you have these guys as friends, and a backstory as to why I'm even in this panel. A few years ago, Doug discovered my YouTube channel where I debunked Disney myths. He naturally became one of my first friends when I moved out here to California. I actually asked my managers out in New York, where I still worked for the Walt Disney Company. I asked them to relocate my position out here in California so I could go to Disneyland every weekend. So yes, dreams come true if you just ask your managers. So anyway, Doug, now being one of my first friends here, he asked me to join him and Tom at the previous D23 Expo to help them debunk Disney myths, and here we are again today. So through them, I got to learn so much about the Walt Disney Company, particularly the Animation Research Library and Disney Animation Studios. Answers to my many questions, like as a fan, were now literally in front of me, like what makes something canon and what does not. I took on the role as their young Padawan, where I just wanted to learn more. So I come to all of you today as like a liaison of what it's like when you're a Disney fan like myself and have access to the official resources, being these guys. One day, I'm going to talk about the Jungle Book. One day the three of us were walking to lunch to discuss possible topics for this very panel. Tom here, who just got back from vacation, mentioned that he saw the new live-action Jungle Book on his recent plane trip, but only caught the very end of it. However, he flaunted that it was the most important scene from the entire film that he wanted to see anyway. They continued to talk about just wanting to see the credits, as seen behind me, and this exchange between Tom and Doug was so casual. I finally chimed in and asked what the big deal was about with the end of the Jungle Book. Tom said matter-of-factly, the book used at the very end of this Jungle Book is the same one used in the animated version. Immediately I jumped and I was like, why isn't this being pitched for our very D23 Expo panel? It was only then when both Tom and Doug actually realized this was a cool fun fact that many people don't know about. And this is essentially how some of the topics today came to fruition. I realized that being the young Padawan of the group was not a hindrance to my contribution, but more so a benefit, because as a fan not surrounded by this material every day, I could easily pinpoint the coolest topics that might not stand out as extraordinary to them. So with that said, my first real topic, the Jungle Book. As we can see here behind me, here's the original opening to Walt Disney's The Jungle Book from 1967. Based on the previous slide where we saw the ending credits of the live action film, we can see that it is indeed the same book based on the ornate front cover. But how did Tom and Doug even discover that these were the same books? Well, it's because their team houses that specific prop in the Animation Research Library. It was their department that lent out the prop during the live action film's production. However, another interesting find was made when the collections team opened this gem. They discovered that its contents were not related to the Jungle Book whatsoever. You guys ready? So we opened the book and found out it's Robin Hood. So here's our hand model, Jamie, a member of the collections team, showing us that it actually has the contents of Robin Hood on the inside. So we learned that it was actually repurposed after 1967 to later be utilized in the 1973 film Robin Hood. So here's a casual look at the intro from Robin Hood, and we can see that is indeed the same book. And then if you're wondering about that specific page, yes, it's inside the prop book as well. So I hope you enjoyed our first secret reveal and a first look into what the Animation Research Library holds in their collection. So next up is Tom with my favorite kind of topic, which is characters without names.
Yeah, here we go again. Okay. Good job, Keith. All right, so in 2015, I started my presentation with this guy. So I'm going to debunk the myth of where the Raven got his name. Okay. In the Disney fan community, he's been known as Diablo for years, and I've always wanted to know really where that name came from. So from 2015 until today, through a lot of research, asking a lot of questions, and going to the Disney historian community, I have found out what I think will point to where the Raven got his name. Now, as has been mentioned, the Animation Research Library holds the original artwork, and we hold the artwork for Sleeping Beauty. So to show you that animation is an ever-changing process, I pulled this visual development sketch of Maleficent with a falcon on her arm, not a raven. Now, once a character design is finalized, all the character animators are handled on the model sheet. And as you see here, this one is of the raven. Now, within the collection, we have approximately 7,500 story sketches, original story sketches from Sleeping Beauty. And in researching all of those, he is only referred to as Raven, or as Maleficent calls him, as you see here, my pet. Now, having gone through all this type of documentation within the ARL, the Walt Disney Archives, along with asking questions of the Disney Historian Network, yeah, kind of move over a bit. Yeah, that kind of works. Okay, all right, guys. So, author and Disney historian Jeff Curdy actually got a hold of me and said, look, why don't you find this book published in 1972 called Walt Disney Storyland. This happens to be the 10th edition. Now, on this floor, I actually found out there's an earlier version from 1962. Both versions, and on the page 343 in this book, happens to have the same paragraph where the author gives Maleficent a hawk, not a raven, and in this case calls him, as you see at the bottom, Diabolo, not Diablo. Also, if you take a look at the artwork for the page, and it's the same within both books, the artist who did the page did completely different Maleficent and King Stefan. They look nothing like the original feature. Now, at this point, you're probably wondering why that's there, so I'm going to back up a bit to 1957, when the Sleeping Beauty Castle attraction opened in Disneyland. It featured an Ivan Earl-inspired walkthrough telling the story of Sleeping Beauty in window vignettes. Oops, hit this one. Thanks to Mr. Chris Merritt at Walt Disney Imagineering, he found this drawing by Mark Davis with the Raven, and that was used as a reference for the walkthrough of the attraction. And as you see within this sketch, he's only referred to as Bird. Now, in the 70s, the castle walkthrough was shut down for a little bit to go through a redesign that would end up featuring animatronics that you would find on the Main Street windows of Disneyland. It is here that the storybook page in that walkthrough has the name Diabolo. Now, this walkthrough attraction lasted until the early 2000s, where it was closed to guests. It would later reopen in 2008 with the interior changed back to the original Ivan Earl walkthrough from 1957. And it's still there because the page today shows the Raven, and never uses a name to identify who he is. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this, I've been asking questions everywhere since 2015 until now of how the Raven got his name, the Ebola. So thanks to Mr. Fox Carney at the Animation Research Library, who I work with, he directed me to this clip from Picture Perfect, The Making of Sleeping Beauty, where the development of the Raven is discussed.
He said that Cruella de Vil had other people to bounce off of.
Anita, darling, how are you? Miserable, darling, as usual, perfectly wretched.
Whereas Maleficent, she just gave speeches.
Oh, they're hopeless. A disgrace to the forces of evil.
It's very difficult to do a character that speaks more or less directly to the audience and does not work closely with another character. So the one thing she had to work with was the Raven.
It was a story I want for her to be able to talk to somebody. But I remember Mark sitting down there and he had a little 16 millimeter viewer, and he had gotten footage from the True Life Adventure people, and they had ravens that they had shot.
Oh, I remember them borrowing film from us. I remember a number of times furnishing animal footage to animators for reference. Ravens were in everything we ever made because they're such a ubiquitous bird.
Okay, so as you see within this clip, he is only referred to as Raven throughout. So everything that I have found that references the original source material, meaning the film, only calls him Raven, Bird, or My Pet. So it appears that the name originated from this book, and somehow over the years probably got misspelled because you saw in the book it was Diabolo, not Diablo. But you see, the thing is, this book was published in 1972, and the other one was done in 1962. And that was done well after the movie Sleeping Beauty. And if you also notice in the book by the artwork, Maleficent looked nothing like it was from the actual story. So the purpose of the Animation Research Library is to maintain the integrity of the original source material and the intent of the directors, writers, and artists inside Walt Disney Animation. Any kind of creative liberties taken from writers or artists outside of Walt Disney Animation over the years do not apply to the original film, which in this case, researching all the material within the ARL, the Walt Disney Archives, Walt Disney Imagineering, and contacting outside Disney historians, the Ravens from Sleeping Beauty really does not have a name, and he's only referenced as Raven. So I would consider this topic, it's now debunked.
Yeah.
I think you're up next, Doug.
I think so too.
I'm going to get out of the way.
There, you take
I'm going to go over this one.
Okay. Okay, folks. Do we have any Star Wars fans out there?
Big time.
Just a couple. Well, as we ought to know by now, this year marks the 40th anniversary of the release of the original Star Wars film. And so it looks like we've got a few fans out there.
Okay, that's me. I will protect the vaults. And this I will protect the vaults. Had to.
No.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Obi-Tom Kenobi. Can I get a picture like that later? Yeah?
The lightsaber's coming back, trust me.
That is literally the Disney vault, by the way.
That lights up the whole vault. That lightsaber lit up the whole vault.
Yeah.
Continue. Sorry.
We're off script.
Yeah.
Okay. So, the image that we're showing here is concept art from Treasure Planet, which is directed by, you all know the directors? Ron Clements and John Musker, our directors of Moana. So, 2017, and I'll tell you why this is going into a kind of a spacey topic, it also marks the 60th anniversary of the broadcast of Mars and Beyond, which is the 12th episode in the 4th season of the Disneyland television series. It premiered on the 4th of December, 1957, released theatrically about 3 weeks after that, and was produced and directed by one of Walt Disney's 9 old men, Ward Kimball. Now, Ward was known primarily as one of the least Disney of the 9 old men, providing a lot of style and broad humor to some of his animated characters, such as Lucifer in Cinderella, Bacchus in the Pastoral Symphony sequence of Fantasia, and the Cheshire Cat in Alice in Wonderland. He even poked fun at himself, along with fellow animator Freddie Moore, in the 1941 short, The Nifty 90s. So Ward found his voice as a director in the mid-1950s with 2 shorts. Adventures in Music Melody, and the Oscar-winning Toot, Whistle, Plunk, and Boom. So Walt was in the midst of developing and opening Disneyland at that time, so he approached Ward to produce a trio of programs about outer space, the topic that Ward was very passionate about. So it began with Man in Space, which was shown in 1955, and in that same year, Man and the Moon. Mars and Beyond was the final of the three shows. So I'm going to show you an excerpt from the pulp science fiction sequence of that episode. Miss Smith. She reveals herself to be Superwoman, as she was called in the production documentation. So it appears that 60 years ago, the Disney studio had its first ever female superhero that the audience as well could marvel. What? It worked. It worked in rehearsal. Here are some of the story sketches, the style of which was faithfully followed in the production animation, although these are not done by Ward Kimball. Ward Kimball was a supporter of stylized animation and design, especially if it justified the story that was being told. Now, meanwhile, the background paintings in this episode represented the more traditional style and design of earlier Disney animation. Ward Kimball called this series of programs the creative high point of his career. Since Walt was busy with the parks and spending less time at the studio, Ward was free to apply his creative and comedic skills into these shows. And you can see the results in the episode, which boasted more original animation sequences than in any episode of the Disneyland series. And Leo Matsuda, the director of last year's short, Inner Workings, credits the artistry of the episode as an inspiration for his own artistic style. And you can see the influence in this still from Inner Workings. So, to Mars and Beyond, some fun facts on its 60th anniversary. Keith is up next to ask that debunking question. Well, I'll let him ask that.
Yeah, we'll let him figure it out.
Thank you. Hi again. Okay. So the next topic, the title is, What's in a Name? So can anyone guess what this topic might be about?
Prince Adam.
Alright, well, yeah, it's going to be a little bit about the Beast, but I'll only do like 3 slides on him. I promise. So, but anyway, we're going to be debunking more myths in this segment. So in the last D23 Expo and in my own YouTube channel, we debunked and proved that the Beast from Beauty and the Beast does not have a proper name. So if you heard otherwise that his name might be something like Adam, you have been misinformed. We'll quickly rehash, but we even went as far as going directly to resources from where the myth is claimed to have started. So for example, one rumor was that the Disney Theatrical's Broadway production had named him that in their script. After asking Disney Theatrical for their input on the subject, they said that there was no use of the name Adam in their production. And we even asked the original choreographer, Matt West, to confirm that it wasn't. Without having to rehash every little detail, here's a video from the actual producer of Beauty and the Beast to just completely squash any rumors.
Thanks, Keith. Yeah, a lot of people have asked us about the name of the Beast, and the truth is we didn't name him. When we were making the movie for Wazir, the directors, and the team that made the movie, we all felt like it would be really weird at the 11th hour in the film, right when he transformed back into a human, and Belle's closing in for a kiss, and stops for a moment and says, "What was your name again?" And it just seemed like it didn't fit anywhere. So we decided just to call him the Beast, which seemed to work out okay, until years after the movie came out, people started calling him Adam. And it's okay, Adam. And I called up the directors and I said, "Adam, did you?" "No, I didn't call him Adam. I didn't call him Glenn Keane." I said, "Glenn, did you read it Adam?" I said, "No, I didn't call him Adam. Did you call him Adam?" It was just always odd to us because if given a chance, we probably would have named him something French because the movie takes place in France and we did our homework and a lot of the elements of the movie are French. So we probably would have named him like Louis or Francois or Gigi or something that was French to make him feel like he was part of the movie. So anyway, that's a little bit of myth busting out there. We don't know anything about Adam. I'm sure he's a nice guy. I think he's a new to the Beast. But he seems to somehow be part of the mythology surrounding the movie. So that's it for me. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Don. So Tom and Doug, if you guys came to the last D23 Expo, I'm sorry for the repeat video, but like this is a really cool video. Don Hahn said my name. And so it was one of the best surprises I ever got from Tom and Doug over here. But incidentally, Beast is not the only Disney character that has had a false name applied to him publicly. In fact, there are tons more. So another example is another prince, except from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Rumors have spread that he is known as Florian or Ferdinand, which is also not true. So very much like the Beast, this prince does not have an official name other than the prince. The origin of the prince's false name is actually easy to trace, and it dates back to the 11th Academy Awards in 1939. Shirley Temple presented Walt Disney with a special Oscar for his achievement with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. In her speech, Shirley Temple calls Walt Disney the daddy of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Mickey Mouse, Ferdinand, and all the others. From this, people assumed she was referring to Snow White's prince as Ferdinand. However, she was really talking about Ferdinand the Bull from the 1939 short, which she refers to because it also won an Oscar for Best Short Subject in Cartoons that very same year. So I'm sorry if I disappointed anyone, but just remember Snow White and Ferdinand are not a thing because we don't have room for another Beauty and the Beast film. But moving on, does anyone know their names? No. Nobody knows their names. Someone said Hyacinth Hippo. Okay, so
Belle and Beast.
So let's go back to another time I had lunch with Tom and Doug. A lot of our topics came today from lunches. We eat a lot. So I once asked them, so Beast doesn't have a name because it's not in the film. Snow White's prince also never gets mentioned in the credits or in the film and so forth. So how about the characters from Fantasia? It's completely soundless, so like they never mention it. And to my surprise, Tom and Doug did not know the origin of these names. In order for something to be officially acknowledged, the name has to be either included in the film, the credit sequence, or an official marketing material produced by Disney Animation. So the names like Hyacinth Hippo and Ben Alligator and so forth were nowhere to be found. Oop, did I skip? Oop, I went back, sorry. It's giving problems. There's no cursor on this. But anyway, names like Hyacinth Hippo and Ben Alligator were nowhere to be found in it. So we didn't actually find out that the names we mentioned actually are official. And it's because Kevin Kern, a member of the Walt Disney Archives, had given us a sneak peek at something that was given during the official release of Fantasia. So this is a playbill or brochure that was given to all concert goers with every ticket purchased. It is in this playbill where we discover that all of these characters do have names attached to them. So here's one of the pages inside the program for the Nutcracker Suite. And if we zoom in, we can see that in the Chinese dance, Hop Low, which is the little mushroom, is mentioned. And then if we go to the next page, in the pages for Dance of the Hours, we can see all the characters in question are already addressed by name. So I'm gonna Vanna White it so you guys can see. But at the top it says Mademoiselle Upanova, and then there's Hyacinth Hippo right over there, and then there's Ben Alligator, and then like if you go through all the pages, I almost done that. You didn't see that? But yeah, all the names are over there. So nowhere else will you find these names in the credits or the film itself. So it's been really cool being immersed in so much information and learning name origins. Basically the lesson I've learned from getting to know so many people in the various archives and libraries of the Walt Disney Company is that the only projects that have the Walt Disney Animation Studios brand attached to it are what the Animation Research Library handles and keeps as canon. As John Lasseter once said, to paraphrase, the studio who starts the canon keeps the canon. There are many divisions of the Walt Disney Company, but the remakes and extensions outside of the Walt Disney Animation Studios are creating their own universes at that point. To apply this statement, we recently had Beauty and the Beast as a live-action film released earlier this year. Before that, we also had a Broadway musical version of it. Characters like Wardrobe were given a new name in these versions. So for Broadway, her name was Madame de la Grande Bouche. For the new live-action version, it was Madame Garderobe. Both retellings are amazing works, but they are also their own entities, not to be confused with Wardrobe from the 1991 animated version. Before I end this segment, here are a couple of other characters you may have also thought had a proper name, but don't. So there's Footstool Dog from Beauty and the Beast, Feather Duster, the Huntsman from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and the Queen from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And actually, the Queen, I've made this mistake up until recently, but Doug corrected me. It is not the evil queen, she is only credited as the queen. So not the evil queen, just the queen. So I wish I could go over facts and reasons for every Disney character with a misnomer name, but due to time constraints on this panel, you have to stay tuned for 2019 for more debunking.
That is if you want us.
Yeah, if you want us, we'll be back.
Little podcast. We set that up.
But up next we have Tom.
Oh, it's me?
It is. It is you.
Okay.
I think you'll be talking about a little.
Oh, that's right.
And
Somebody
you'll be
who's like
continuing the
90s.
theme of something that is canon.
That's right, but it's also this other character's, actually, it's his character's 90th anniversary, because I'm going to be talking today about Oswald. He is celebrating his 90th anniversary, and my topic that I will debunk is a myth as to which female characters or leading ladies actually starred in the Oswald animated films. Now, to begin with, and if I can get this thing to move, who here can name this young lady? And that's Black Widow, right? Okay, who is it? That is correct. By the way, at the end of the panel, she is now yours. I need this right now, though. Not yet. Not yet. Soon. Soon. And I know you're Black Widow. It's easy to spot you, so nobody else is going to grab her. I know who's going to get her. Okay. So, but you are correct. Her name is Hortensia. But she was created for the Nintendo Wii game Epic Mickey in 2010. And her role in the game was to be a girlfriend to Oswald, like Minnie is to Mickey. But there is a misconception that she was actually in an Oswald film. But there is in fact two leading ladies that starred opposite of Oswald in his animated films. And this is really not getting down to where... okay. Skipped ahead a bit. Back up. And... okay. Back up. So there's a misconception she appeared in the Oswald films. So, when Oswald came back to the Animation Research Library in 2005, we have been able to go through all the animation and artwork that we have on hand. And during that, through research, we have found that we ended up getting some original animation from, that was a telegraph there, but this was from Hungry Hobos. We did not expect to get some visual development pieces. Here is an example from Africa Before Dark. The one thing we did not expect, it's very rare, but here's a layout from Ride on Plowboys. And also what we received is some background. This is an example of a background from the short Bright Lights. And through researching all the film reference, animation drafts, story notes, and anything in the collection that the Walt Disney Archives have, we identified roughly about 14 or 16 of his animated shorts. 14 of 26, sorry, I meant 16. I kind of cut it by 10 at that point, didn't I? Yeah, that happens. But through all that research, I have found out that going through it, he actually had two leading ladies that played opposite him in his animated shorts. One of them was a female rabbit, and the other one was a cat-like little girl. Now, history shows that Oswald made his first appearance in Trolley Troubles, which was released to the public in September of 1927. But his first short that he actually was in by Walt Disney, after these shorts, she's only known as Miss Rabbit. Now there are two shorts that we consider lost because we really don't have any film for that, and that's Rickety Jid and Neck and Neck. What we do have for those shorts is some of the drafts and artwork, and information in these shorts basically say that she is a female rabbit. But what's interesting about this is those two shorts overlap with two other shorts that introduce the next young lady who is cat-like in appearance. This piece of original animation is from Harem Scarum. And this is where you see her for the first time, this cat-like little lady. She is from Harem Scarum, and in the draft she is listed as the Hula Hula Charmer or Shimmy Shimmy Queen. And I telegraphed, but we see her again, thanks to this poster from Bright Lights, she's known as Mademoiselle Zulu. In the next few slides, this young lady sticks around again, a little bit longer than Miss Rabbit. With a little bit of a tweak, her design, she is now in Rival Romeo's. She's tweaked again in the short Oh When a Night, where in both of these in the draft, she's only known as his Lady Love. And here she's given another name, and that's Sadie from Sagebrush Sadie. I kind of missed a bit because she was labeled Fanny in one of the earlier shorts because the thing didn't scroll up. But anyway, we'll continue on. So lastly, in the short Skyscrapers, we see her again, but this time she's going as Box Lunch Fanny. Now, since the ARL and the Walt Disney Archives are sources to be used for research, it's our job to maintain the integrity of the original source material. And now that Oswald has come back home to us, it's pretty cool to reintroduce him to the world now that it's his 90th anniversary. That means I get to inform new fans like yourselves of his legacy and that of his co-stars. So when it comes to his leading ladies, the two starlets that I pointed out to you right now can now get their day in the sun. But that also goes to show that this young lady, Hortensia, well, she was created for the Epic Mickey game in 2010. And that's the only time she appeared because she was never in any of the Oswald shorts. I would say that any rumor out there that she was in there, where I would say that's kind of debunked at this point. Doug, I think you're up to the mic.
Okay. Thanks, Tom.
By the way,
Yeah. Black Widow. Hey,
Black Widow?
Black Widow.
that's yours.
There you go.
No problem.
Well done.
It's on there. Yeah.
Now it's time to share more Disney animation secrets. Walt Disney's fascination and experimentation with using technology wasn't simply a way to launch a gimmick. The technology served to help his animated pictures tell the best story possible, whether by adding sound, using the widescreen, or the vibrant hues of Technicolor. I love that effect. Walt was always interested in how to take the story further than we've seen or heard before. And one of those technical marvels, I use that word again, was the use of the multiplane camera. There it is. The Disney Studio wasn't the first to create a camera of this type. In fact, a predecessor to the multiplane camera was used as early as the mid-1920s in Lotte Reiniger's animated feature, The Adventures of Prince Ahmed. Anybody hear of that? Then you know it predates Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs as the first ever animated feature in the world. Walt's artistic partner, Ub Iwerks, developed the multiplane system in the early 1930s. And that's Ub from a little later in his life. I love his glasses. But it was in the late 1930s when William Garrity, who devised a way to add sound to Steamboat Willie at the Disney Studio, who submitted a patent for the first camera to employ 4 layers of art to create the feeling of depth. Dave Smith, now retired and is the archivist emeritus at the Walt Disney Archives, he referred to William Garrity as the unsung hero of Disney animation. In this clip from the 1957 TV episode Tricks of the Owl Trade, Walt gives an in-depth view of what it does and how it works. Now your host, Walt Disney. I've always wanted to say that in public.
This is the plan for a super cartoon camera. You see, we decided for features. The camera needed improvement too. Of course, our cartoon camera does not shoot sideways, but is placed above and shoots downward toward the drone. Since this new camera used many planes, we called it the multiplane camera. This trick of obtaining a feeling of real depth and dimension in our painted backgrounds was used extensively in the feature cartoons. In our frame-by-frame method of photographing a cartoon scene, the feeling of depth is not actually too evident when the scene is under the camera. You might be thinking that it looks as flat as the old-fashioned type of cartoon background. In fact, it does while it holds still. The trick of the multiplane camera is movement.
That really is amazing. Sometimes the glass plates were as large as the ones seen in the clip, and other times the plates were smaller and more manageable. It depended on what was required from the feature or the short. The glass plates were uniquely manufactured, and as a result were expensive, and at times they break. So in order to maintain costs, the paint on the plates were cleaned off. And they repainted it with new paintings, new paintings applied. Now, luckily for us, not all of the plates were cleaned and reused. A set of surviving multiplane glass plates still in existence at the studio, many of which are in the care of the Animation Research Library. Now, this plate from Bambi was later carefully recreated for the multiplane camera display at the Walt Disney Family Museum in San Francisco. And here's how the plate follows the camera move in the final version of the film. Here is a brief look at where the multiplane effect was seen, starting with the first film to use it, the Academy Award-winning The Old Mill, which was released 75 years ago this November. Pretty cool. And with the use of the computerized system known as CAPS that began in 1989 and was in use for about 15 years, that multiplane effect was created digitally. Ooh, there's a play button. I like that. Got the play button. Let me try this. There we go. So in an interview with Pete Martin of the Saturday Evening Post in 1956, Walt said, "You know, I've always had a feeling that anytime you can kind of experiment or do anything, you ought to do it. You'll never know what will come of it. And I have that feeling today when my boys come to me with an idea that sounds plausible to me, sounds possible. I try to go with them on the experiment because you'll never know what will happen." And as surely as Walt Disney had done, Disney animation will keep moving forward. Now, here's Keith, who's been on the hunt for fun finds, along with a debunk here and there.
Thank you, Doug. It's my last segment, guys. So in my final segment, unfortunately, for this panel, we're going to talk about Easter eggs. Practically every Disney film has them, and it's always fun to hunt them down. So if you don't know some of the more recent Easter eggs, here we have a scene from Big Hero 6 where we find John Lasseter, Andrew Milstein, and Steve Jobs casually roaming around the showcase base floor. If you guys don't see them, let's do a little zoom in. Boom. So there's the three of them, John Lasseter, Steve Jobs, Andrew Melstein. Okay, and then from Moana, did you notice that this tablecloth is actually the design of carpet from Aladdin? I put this Easter egg in because Pacific Islander representation. In Zootopia, there are tons of Easter eggs. However, there is one that is a nod to a Frozen character. If you notice in this background, one of the shops is named Hans's Pastry Shop. I put this Easter egg in because I love donuts. But when directors and their teams place Easter eggs, they usually don't intend for it to be more than exactly that, an Easter egg. For example, Hans's Pastry Shop behind me does not mean Hans now lives in Zootopia. In fact, since this is Little Rodentia, that would mean that would be a very little Hans. But now that we've seen a couple of Easter eggs, let's take a look at some that have moved on to be a little more than what was intended. So here we have a moment in Frozen where you can see Rapunzel and Eugene / Flynn Rider have made a trip to Arendelle. So for those that don't see, there's Flynn Rider and Rapunzel. So it's almost like how the king and his duke from Cinderella appeared in The Little Mermaid. So like in the back over there, you see the king and the duke. I put this Easter egg in because I love puppies. However, for some reason, the appearance of Rapunzel in Frozen has spiraled off into fan theories trying to connect multiple Disney films together. Here's what's being said. The belief is that Anna and Elsa's parents are traveling to Rapunzel's wedding because both queens are related. In addition to that, the ship that went down is believed to be the same ship that Ariel from The Little Mermaid explores. And finally, Elsa and Anna's parents are shipwrecked and also have a baby boy that grows up to be Tarzan in Africa. So as ridiculous as this sounds, it's something that many people believe, but I assure you none of this fan theory is true or canon. In fact, in Frozen, the king and queen do say they're on a trip for 2 weeks. And I'm just a guy, so I don't know, but I don't know if many of you know this, but I'm pretty sure you can't get pregnant and have a baby in 2 weeks. So all of this reminds me of a meme I once found on the internet that describes perfectly the creation of fan theories. In this Venn diagram, we have a circle labeled as what the author meant versus another circle depicting what your English teacher thinks they meant. For example, let's say the author says that the curtains were blue. Your old English teacher may have told you that the author has the curtains represent the subject's immense sadness and lack of will to continue. But what did the author really mean? The curtains were blue, nothing more. So there's talk that Hercules is somehow cousins to Ariel. We're moving on to more debunking now. Hercules being cousins to Ariel from The Little Mermaid. However, just like how Disney Animation creates their own universes separate from the live-action remakes and Broadway theatricals, Disney Animation is creating their own universe separate from historical Greek mythology. But there are stories circulating on the internet claiming Ariel to be connected to Hercules because her father here, King Triton, is supposed to be the son of Poseidon. Poseidon is god of the sea and brother to Zeus, who is Hercules' father. However, this family tree does not exist in the Disney universe as both Hercules and The Little Mermaid are completely different films. If you were to apply all of Greek mythology to the Disney animation universe, for example, then Hera, Hercules' mother, should be his main antagonist. Finally, let's talk about Hunchback of Notre Dame. If you notice in this shot during the song Out There, let's wait for it. Some of you already know what's going to happen, but you'll notice that there is Belle from Beauty and the Beast casually strolling through the city. Many then like to spread the rumor or myth that the Hunchback of Notre Dame and Beauty and the Beast took place at the same exact time. However, I always come back to this meme when reading any fan theory. So an Easter egg including another film including Belle in another film is intended as, look, there's Belle. Isn't that a cool hidden cameo? But what do fans think the directors mean? Look, there's Belle. Disney is hinting that these films are intertwined and taking place at the same time, with both protagonists longing for adventure in the great white somewhere out there. But what did the directors really mean? Look, there's Belle. So, thank you guys. Up next is Tom. Yes.
Last thing I'm going to present tonight, it's not going to be debunking anything, it's going to be revealing a secret, because that's basically what we're doing in this panel. And I am going to bring you up to date on what's happening with Mickey's Polo Team. It's very funny how I said that. This was done in 1936, as you see, and being a Mickey's Polo Team, and being a member of the collections team within the ARL, it's our job to go through the animation to make sure that it's housed properly. And while going through the animation for this short, I came across a very interesting find. First things first is, it's Mickey's Polo Team, and it featured old-time celebrity caricatures that included, hey look, there's Shirley Temple, we saw her earlier, Jack Holt, Stan Laurel, Oliver Hardy, Harpo Marx. This is original animation, by the way, it's a shot of it. And this is my favorite caricature of the whole thing, Charlie Chaplin. Wait for it. Okay.
Well, that's the end of that. There you go, reverse that one.
Alright. Then you have Clark Gable with Clarabelle Cow. And then Edna Oliver. But that's just to name a few, because it's just littered with a bunch of celebrity caricatures. But there is one celebrity I found out that never made the final film, and that was Mae West. Now, while going through the animation, I came across two scenes that were listed between Mr. Gable and Miss Oliver. Both of the scenes were animated by Grim Natalie and had Mae West seated next to the grasshopper from Grasshopper with the Ants, as you can see here. Being curious as to why these scenes were cut, I decided to look into why. So I looked into all our documentation within the ARL, the Walt Disney Archives, and also asking questions within the Disney Historian Network. Disney historian and author David Gerstein and I discussed for a little bit and came up with two possibilities as to why the scenes were possibly cut. One was the possibility that Frank Churchill, Disney music composer, didn't agree with how the grasshopper was holding the fiddle during the animation. The other possibility was the size of the grasshopper next to Mae West. Now, the grasshopper next to the ant, that works. But the grasshopper next to Mae West? Not so much. Now, could another possibility have been the reason why that scene was cut? As of this date, we really don't have the documentation, but you see, that's okay. Within the Animation Research Library, it is our job to make sure that we protect the animation, whether it is used or not. It is our responsibility to go through it, make sure it's housed archivally as possible, and stored, as you saw in the photo earlier, what our vaults look like, so it can be researched from artists within the Walt Disney Company, and possibly used for an artist later to inspire it to just become another artist. But the best thing about this is it gives me a secret that I can reveal to you today at the Disney D23 Expo that you guys probably never knew would have existed. So I guarantee you, go to the short, watch it, and see the very interesting cut that happens between Clark Gable and Edna Mae Oliver, and see if you can figure out if you can tell if it's there or not. Next up, our last one is done.
So for the final topic in this panel, I'm going to pay a little tribute, as well as reveal a secret of the Animation Research Library. In December of last year, the world lost a true artist, Tyrus Wong. I had the pleasure and honor of meeting Tyrus very briefly back in 2005, when the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences presented a restored version of Bambi. Now this is Tyrus from that event. He had since visited the ARL, and on occasion, as he had done, and in 2010, he sat down to give us an oral history of his life and times at Disney's. So here's a moment from our conversation with Tyrus Wong, The person that's asking the question at the beginning is actually a kind of a legend himself, Mr. Howard Green, who's worked for Disney publicity for over 30, nearly 40 years.
Tyrus, everybody says that Bambi doesn't look like any other Disney film, that it has a unique look in its style.
No, it's it has sort of a little Orient influence, kind of dreamy. It's different. Because I think in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, everything is painted out, which is good, for Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. This is a landscape thing, so I don't know. At that time, I didn't know that what they take to paint it was style. They followed style, which I didn't know. I just painted just for the hell of it. I just liked the animals they painted. But later on, they came out that they followed the style.
Tyrus worked at the studio for only 3.5 years when the animator strike had cut short his time there, and he wasn't able to see Bambi to its completion. Tyrus had a much longer career at Warner Brothers as a successful designer and art director there, but it's his work on Bambi for which he may be best remembered, with its dreamy and poetic influences that found its way into the visual style of the feature. During his time at the Disney studio, Tyrus often worked with pastels to create that dreamy look in his concept art. Now, I don't know how many of you out there have ever worked with pastels or even with chalk or charcoal, but dang, it's messy. Over the course of time, the powdery bits that were applied to the paper could transfer off from the art just through simple contact. Often the pastel art would be unpinned from their boards and stacked inside a folder, guaranteeing that the other art would be contaminated by the loosened panels. So there was always the risk and the likelihood of diminishing the visual power of the art with each time it was handled. So at the ARL, our collections team, of which Tom is a member, explored how we could keep Tyrus's art and all fragile art of this kind from being exposed in that manner. So what was the answer? Build a special storage tray for each pastel piece. The collections team, working with the ARL's design team, devised a custom-built pastel tray made from acid-free materials that would give the pastel art a place to rest without making contact with another piece. What the bumpers on the sides of the tray will do is to make each tray act as a mini shelf so that another tray could be stacked on top, leaving space between each piece of the pastel art. The trays are kept in an acid-free box, and then that box is placed on the appropriate shelf in our vaults. So here, an eager fan poses with Tyrus Wong, thanks to artist and musician Jorgen Kluben for taking that photo. At the time that that photo was taken, Tyrus was age 102, and he lived to the ripe young age of 106. So with our ever-evolving archiving efforts, we hope that Tyrus's art and his legacy to Disney animation will carry on for a long time. To learn more about this remarkable artist and his equally remarkable life, check out that short film celebrating Tyrus Wong that accompanies the Walt Disney Signature Collection's digital release of Bambi, and catch the public television debut of the documentary Tyrus, which is premiering on American Masters through your local PBS station on Friday, the 8th of September this year. So, I'm almost wrapped up, and our time is almost up, but I have a giveaway before we do this. Back in 2007, we participated in an exhibition in Paris called Once Upon a Time Walt Disney. This is a rare catalog from that period, and I'm going to give it away to somebody out here. But not to Black Widow, I'm sorry.
You got Hortensia.
Yeah, so that's not bad. So does anybody remember what that exhibition was about? It's about how European art influences the Disney animation stories, and it's a great book. It features art from our collection, and it puts it side by side with other artists from Europe. So I'm going to ask, how many cast members do we have out here? You are now disqualified.
It would have been too easy. Continue.
2 years ago, we asked who were the names of the 7 dwarfs. That cast member actually got it right.
That's right.
So, I'm going to ask a question based on what you saw today. What did William, who, why,
Where?
and yes. Okay, that's it. No. So the question is, in the multiplane segment of today's presentation, Dave Smith called William Garrity what? And I will award it to the first person to raise their hand. Close. Wait, unsung hero. Congratulations. Congratulations. So fan theories are fun and entertaining, and when they start being shared as truth, well, that's when we have to step in and set things straight. Like Mama Odie sang in that song, you have to dig a little deeper, especially to get to the truth of things, whether they are Disney animation or anything else in between. And on behalf of Tom, Keith, and myself, we hope that you've enjoyed this as much as we've enjoyed bringing it to you. All of the research and consulting we've done for the presentation could not have been made possible without the help and support of the various Disney departments and individuals that are listed on the screen. To them, we express our thanks. And of course, we'd like to thank the fans as well, whose steadfast enthusiasm and dedication to Disney animation makes these presentations possible. Now, doing these presentations, well, you know, it's a big deal when you're up here and doing it. But it's an even bigger deal when you're giving a presentation on your birthday.
Oh, Doug.
So, all of you here in the hall.
No.
Next slide.
What?
Next slide. Oh, yes.
Oh,
No, you
slide.
didn't.
Next
No.
slide. Is it up? Happy birthday.
Everybody will come. Happy birthday. 1, 2, 3.
Happy birthday to you.
Oh, sing it.
I can't say anything. I was going to say what I was going to say. I'm a Disney employee. I can't say it.
Dear Tom, happy birthday to you.
Thank you. And by the way, that is a piece of original Oswald animation there from Rickety Jin. He's holding something right now that I think I need to go get.
I don't think
Thank you for
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't see it. You can't see what he's holding.
But thank you so much. I hope we get the chance to do this again for you in 2019, if you let us, and if you guys will let us.
Yeah, they'll let us. I mean, if they'll let us.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for coming.